This is Jean-Paul from Clutch. We had the pleasure of speaking with him and picking his brain about our favorite parts of this band, which are many.
A little bit of Hendrix geeking out. Here it comes. Recording in progress.
So I must tell you, we talk about Clutch just about every morning.
Sorry about that.
Because on my drive to work at the off ramp I get off, there is this homeless guy who's there just about every morning. In fact, I miss him when he's not there, and he looks just like Neil.
Yeah.
Well, we all kind of look like homeless people, so that's not surprising.
We call him Clutch Guy. So
yeah. So yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
We've been fans of yours a long time, of course, being fellow Baltimoreans.
Yeah.
Is that the correct term?
Well, let's go ahead and say it. You guys are more from Redskins country. You'll know what that means, even though it's not right to say it anymore, apparently, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
You're from, what is it? Commanders country.
Commanders
country, south of Columbia.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of those games. I mean, I didn't really watch Redskins that much, but I definitely don't watch the Commanders.
Yeah. Well, people they'll say, oh, they're from Maryland. You must know them. It's like, no. Baltimore, DC. It's sort of two different,
Right.
Columbia.
Well, we're kind of stuck in the middle. We're over here in Frederick, so we're kind of
okay.
We get a little bit of both.
A lot of DC people moved up to Frederick, 10, 15 years ago. Because I guess when
And there are so many people living up here now. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's that commute.
I used to run the half marathon out there. They kind of ran you through the cow pastures and past Walmart. It was an interesting course.
Well, I can tell you that the cow pastures are becoming more and more rare with every day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's growing up quite a bit.
All right, so back to some Clutch actual business.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see the logo come back from I guess it was 95 to make a comeback on Slaughter Beach. Why'd you kind of go back to that logo?
Well, we've sort of switched between the two of those from depending on the record. It seemed like that logo was just more fitting for the overall tone of Slaughter Beach.
Yeah.
It's I think overall the record just has a little bit more sort of a vibe to it. It's a little darker than some of the other records we've made in the past. And I think that logo sort of conjures up that kind of feeling. That's the logo that we first used on the self-titled record.
Yep.
And if we think back to those days, I think it wasn't uncommon for a band to, or at least around us anyway, it wasn't uncommon for a band to sort of develop a following and make a logo and then release a record. And then the next record do something completely different. I'm not really sure why we did that. I'm glad we did though, and so it's cool. We have both those logos, and they sort of lend themselves to different vibes, I think.
Yeah.
He had the old logo shirt, but we have scoured the house. It's somewhere.
Clutch is. I have lost. You've got the award. I've lost 3 Clutch shirts. You have the award for most lost shirts of a band of mine. Yeah. So.
Well, I guess that's good.
I don't know what it is. I always, I try to be careful with them. But,
right.
So your song titles, I think you guys also win the award for the most interesting song titles with your Skeletons on Mars and Willing. What comes first, like the song or the title?
Well, that's an interesting question. When we go to start the process of writing a record, we always give whatever it is we're doing a working title. Because if you don't do that, then you just end up with Jam 1 or E Jam or Blues Jam or Hendrix Jam. We've had about 15 Hendrix Jams actually over the course of our band, but in order to avoid that sort of thing, we'll give something sometimes just a crazy name. And I believe Willie Nelson was one of those. We wrote a song, we just called it Willie Nelson just for the sake of it. And when Neil went to write the lyrics, that sort of lent itself to where his head was at the time, and it kind of made the song. Very often though, we'll name a song something just completely off the wall, and then Neil will go and rework it. And the kind of the cool thing about that is that the song, however you think it's going to go, it never goes in that direction. We're so lucky to have Neil as a lyricist and a writer, because he really he looks at things completely differently than I think a lot of people in rock and roll these days.
Yeah.
I love that video for Willie Nelson too. It's like, I was like, oh my God, he's clean shaven. And then he keeps like, Tim is like banging his head like into the tub. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you guys go to some like production company and kind of meld ideas with what you want, or do they tell you what you're shooting?
Well, we have been able to team up with a couple of video producers that do an excellent job, and they very much understand the band. That's only happened like within the last, 5 or 8 years, which in the course of our career is actually fairly recently. So we're lucky enough to work with Dave Brodsky, and he's got a good pulse as to where we're at, and he understands where we are as a band, and he'll pitch things to us, and he'll get us to do things that nobody else could do. Tim is especially good on camera, I think. I think one of my favorite performances of his is the Ghoul Wrangler video.
Yes.
He and Neil are great together. They work very well on screen.
Yeah. How long did you have to lay in the sand for Slaughter Beach? You were not there forever.
Well, we were there for quite some time. The good thing about that though was we were actually in a studio, and it was a studio that was built to do car commercials. So how sometimes you'll see it'll be an ad for like the new Jeep or whatever, and it might be like racing down the beach or going up a mountain. The reality is that those cars aren't really doing that. That's all done in the box, as they say. Yeah. So we actually went to a facility that specialized in doing those kinds of commercials, and so we were able to make a pretty great video for Slaughter Beach, probably the most epic video I think that we've ever done.
Oh, I love the levitating and the crazy women coming up out of it's amazing.
Yeah. Turned out really good. Yeah.
We try to sort of push each video into a new direction. With the help of Dave, we've been able to come up with some things that the four of us wouldn't have conceived these ideas. Dave is very much he's a part of that creative process for sure.
So back to your beginnings. You had a legendary drummer, Walter Salb. Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
How was it being a student of his?
Woo, man. He was a tough old dude. I'll tell you that. He was a tough guy. A lot of people, a lot of people were turned off by his attitude. We have to remember this is a man who started playing professionally in 1946.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He did his first gig in 1946. So this is a guy that worked all the way through his career, whether it was playing jazz gigs, whether it was playing supper clubs or strip clubs. He would play for many of the inaugurations. Each president that was inaugurated, I think since Nixon, he played their inauguration all the way up through, I think maybe Bill Clinton was the last one that he did. So he was a very prestigious, not only teacher, but player in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I had the great opportunity to study with him for many years. I miss him quite a bit. He was
That's
great.
Interesting. There's probably not that many drummers with a security clearance. He must have had one.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, he liked guns a lot.
Okay.
He sometimes he would take a pistol and he would tell you, play time, and then he would take that pistol, he would knock it on your shoulder.
Oh my God.
That's the quarter note. We're, get it together. That's the quarter
like
note.
That movie Whiplash. My God.
Well, you know what? A lot of people compared Walter to that teacher, and I think they had a similar attitude in that they were very tough. But the guy in Whiplash was a dick.
Yes.
And Walter was just trying to weed out the people who weren't really serious about music. And I can tell you that I took more than one drummer friend of mine over to see Walter. I would say, man, you got to meet this dude. He's amazing. And Walter would start with, man, all kinds of ethnic jokes, racial slurs, jokes about your weight, jokes about your appearance. He had a very abrasive attitude. It did not matter how old you were, what nationality you were. He had something very specific to say about you. But you know, it was all in an effort to weed the people out who weren't serious about the music.
Yeah.
And I think the guy in Whiplash was just a dick at the end of the day. And Walter was not that. He was very proud. And you know, he passed away, and he was, I think, 79 years old back in 2004, I believe. He went to, you know, we have a side project called the Bakerton Group, which is a kind of an instrumental band that we do. And so Walter came out to a Bakerton Group gig at the 8x10. And that was on a Friday night. And then he passed on Wednesday.
Wow.
On Wednesday. So the point is, he was really, he was very supportive of all his students. And he really tried to, he tried to understand whatever the new music was. You know, when he first came to a Clutch show, he had never seen anything like that before in his life. You know, people jumping off the stage and, you know, screaming and all the madness that goes on at a rock and roll gig. Walter had never seen anything like that. He'd been to a lot of gigs, but that was something new for him. But, you know, he came out and he appreciated it. And I'm grateful to have been able to spend some time with him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, your music is very malleable. It seems the bands that you've opened for, I mean, from Sepultura to Limp Bizkit to Marilyn Manson to Slayer to Mastodon. I mean, I know you've got tons of stories, but, you know, how is it that you're able to, you know, what do you think it is that lets you morph, that you can kind of match strides with all these different bands? I mean,
well, I think it is true. We've been able to play with all kinds of different bands. You know, as you mentioned, coming up, we toured with a lot of the bands that we looked up to: Prong, Sepultura, Pantera. And then we went on tour with some other bands that we didn't particularly like. Specifically, Marilyn Manson sticks out to me.
okay.
We had the offer to go on tour with him. This would have been back in 1996, right when Sweet Dreams was actually just coming out. And we had the offer to go on tour with them. We didn't want to do it. You know, we didn't like that music. We didn't like that attitude. We didn't like the way he presented himself. It was very different than where we came from. But, you know, after a lot of encouragement from our manager and the record label and everybody else who was around us saying, you really need to do this tour, we said, okay, let's do it. And in the end, that was probably one of the best tours that we ever did. Wow. Because maybe 6 months later, we went to town and there would be kids, you know, with lunch boxes and striped shirts and long black hair with Manson t-shirts, and they would be in the front row and they would be singing every word of Space Grass or Tight Like That. So it was an eye-opening experience in that it showed us that you don't pick your audience, you know, you just go play and you do the best gig that you can do. And then hopefully one or two of those people is going to like it. And they're going to tell their friends about it and they're going to come next time. You know, a lot of bands spend a lot of time trying to sort of be like, oh, well, I want to play this venue, or I want to go on tour with this kind of band, or we're going to have this kind of a look and we're going to cater to this kind of an audience. If you just go out there and you just do it from your heart, just go play the music, the people will recognize that and they'll come. And to this day, we have all kinds of people coming to the show. And the best thing of all now is we have kids. Often the whole front row will be just kids sitting up there. And so that's a great feeling.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah.
How has your drum kit setup changed over the years, and what's your typical setup look like?
My drum kit typically looks like that.
Okay.
In fact, these drums here are the ones that I played on the self-titled record, believe it or not.
Oh,
on,
No,
on
no
the,
gongs or chimes or Hawkwindy kind of, no.
No, I don't really mess with a whole lot of that stuff. Early on, I realized that although I liked some of those drummers like Neil Peart
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
Alex Van Halen, or some of these other guys who played huge drum kits. I like that kind of drumming. I totally appreciate it. I suck at that kind of drumming. That's not the kind of drummer I am, and I figured that out pretty early on. I had a double bass kit before Clutch. And it didn't take me long to figure out that there's dudes out there who can play double bass way better than I could ever play it.
Yeah.
I was much more drawn, as far as a player. I was much more drawn to guys like Bill Ward, guys like Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker, these kind of drummers that didn't play so many drums and weren't quite so flashy. I think there was an importance put on the feel of the music, the groove, and the time.
Yeah.
But so anyway, to answer your question, my kit has probably changed very little over the years. Cymbals have gotten a little bigger, but for the most part, it's the same thing. So it's one rack tom, two floor toms usually. A bass drum, usually 24 inches or 26 inches, usually, and then a variety of snare drums. But I prefer to play drums that are tuned in a way that I can get a lot of sounds out of them, so I don't have to play a lot of drums. The cymbals are the same way. I don't play a lot of cymbals, but the ones that I play, I feel like I can get a lot of different sounds out of those. And that's just who I am as a player. There's a lot of guys who can do a lot more with a lot more cymbals. And I totally respect that, but at this point, it's too much stuff. I'd get lost.
I was reading you were talking about that vintage drums have a different sound than new drums. Explain that.
Well, I think that goes with all instruments. There's a thing that happens with wood that has been resonated over and over again for years and years and years. Those. It sounds maybe a little hippie, but I really feel like all those molecules, all that wood, it's just in there and it's just been talking to each other and it's just been hanging out. I'm sure you can relate to a guitarist maybe who plays an old Stratocaster that might be 55 years old and it's just totally beat up. But something happens when that instrument has been played over and over again for years, and you've sweat and you've poured beer into it.
Yeah,
you spent the time on that instrument. It sort of becomes a part of you. And so for that reason, I think that vintage drums just have a vibe to them. That's not to say that new drums don't sound great, because they certainly do. But my favorite drums are drums that I've been playing for years and years. And so this GMS kit specifically, that's a kit that I've been playing now for almost 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And I love it. This snare drum in particular here, I bought this snare drum back in the 90s. That snare drum's been on, probably 6 or 8 Clutch records. You get to know the drums, and you know what they can do. You know how they play in they play in the room. You know how they record, and then you can adjust accordingly.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any songs that you were like tired of playing?
Do you get tired of Space Grass? Do you get tired of?
Sometimes I just get tired. I can tell you that. I try not to get tired of the songs, and I'll tell you, we have a method of picking set lists in which we each take turns. So we started this idea back in, I don't know, probably 1996, probably right before this Marilyn Manson tour that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
And before that, I think Tim used to write most of the set lists. And at some point, I think we just decided, well, let's just take turns. And so we thought, let's do it in alphabetical order by first name. So, I mean, we were real high when we came up with this idea. But we started doing that in 1996, and we still do it to this day. So when we start the tour, the first guy to do a set list will be Dan. And when we start to rehearse for that tour, that's usually the songs that we'll work off of. Dan will come up with a set list, This is what's going to happen on the first night. And then we take a look at those songs. Well, that one we know, this one we haven't played in a while. This one I don't feel like playing right now. And that's how we start. And then the next night is myself, and so I'll introduce some other new songs into the set and omit some of the ones that Dan had. And this process continues throughout the tour. And so because of that, we have a very large catalog of songs to pull from. At the end of a 6-week tour, for example, we just wrapped up in Europe on the 17th of December. We were over there for 6 weeks. I think probably by the time we wrapped in December, we probably had a catalog of close to 80 songs that we could pull from. So we can easily do 2 or 3 nights consecutively and never repeat any songs.
That's great. Wow.
And so
really
because of that, we can swap the songs out, and so the songs become sort of new again. When you play Space Grass at the end of a set, it feels one way, but if you put the Space Grass towards the middle of the set and you go right into Earth Rocker after that, has a totally different vibe. And so the way I play that song is totally different. Yeah. At least for me anyway. Sometimes these details are small, but it keeps us engaged in the tunes, and I think the audience as well. At this point, I think they realize that they're not going to hear the same set list that we played last night or the same set list that we played last time we were in town.
And you can see that on your Instagram pages. I love that you put them up there, even with the crossouts or whatever. I was like, oh, they're all different.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Well, we're proud of that. We're proud of that, and there's a reason why we do that, and it's because we have that wide catalog of songs to pull from, and we know that a lot of bands can't do that, and so we're proud of our ability to somewhat remember 80 songs.
Have you seen that Sparks documentary where they talk about that they played a different album every night? Like they started with their first album, and then they've got like 35 records, and it's fascinating because it's so musically challenging. The guitar player's like, I learned the first record, okay, and then we move on to the second, and I learned that really good, and then we go, and I've already forgotten the first one, and then we're going to the third one. Yes, so they did a tour where every night they played another album from front to back. I mean, can you imagine?
Amazing.
Well, you did the whole album Slaughter Beach when you did your live stream from Hammerjacks. Was that hard?
It was a challenge. That record at that point was brand new, and although we had recorded those songs, we had not played all of them live.
Wow.
So that's always the most challenging part of the process is taking the songs that have been recorded and then beginning to integrate them into the set. It's challenging, but it's also fun too. You really get to learn what those songs are about, and the songs sort of they grow into themselves. They become their own entity. I can tell you, Mercy Brown, for example, off of the new record. I had one perception of that song as we were recording it. But the more we played it, the more I got to know it, and the more comfortable I became with it. And so the feeling of that song changes. Yeah. And so that makes it fun.
That's
really neat. You had a different producer on this. This was a new producer for you guys, Tom Dolgetty, if I'm not killing that. And what do you think he brought to the production that wasn't there before? I think there's more layer on this one.
I think there's more layers too. I agree with you. The first thing is that he's younger than us. I think it's the first time we've actually worked with somebody who was younger than we were. So that was cool. He very much was drawn to the sort of darker, vibier kind of things, some of the weirder kind of things as well. I think probably a good example of that is Jackhammer Our Names, where leading up to the actual recording process, we would post all our new ideas up on the Dropbox, and we would keep Tom posted. Hey man, we put 3 new jams up there. Check them out when you get a chance. And back then, Jackhammer Our Names was just kind of a sketch. I really didn't know what it was, and he kept bringing it up. He was intrigued by it in some way. And for me, it was kind of a head scratcher. What is Tom hearing in this song? I'm not getting it. he was persistent about it. And when we got into the studio, we cut that song, and it was cool because it was a situation in which we really had no idea where the song was going to go. Usually we're very well prepared when we go into the studio. This time was different for a number of reasons. But that song in particular really took shape in the studio, and he was very much part of molding those kind of what I thought was just kind of a loose, sketchy idea into something that I think was quite powerful.
It's great. The just a label related question. This goes all the way back to Elephant Riders. When Elephant Riders came out, I thought the idea of the album was so cool and so creative. The whole thing about Lincoln and you know, the what's it, the guy, the king of India that wanted to send elephants over for the Civil War. And I thought no other band would do this. This is so cool, right? And I remember I went to go buy the album, and the label obviously didn't know what the hell you were, you know, what the theme was, and they slapped a sticker on there that said heavy. And I was just like, you know, I mean, like, what are the worst, like, do you have any like label stories of them just like not getting it like that? Because I just remember thinking, what kind of an idiot puts, you know?
I can tell you the first 15 years of the band was nothing but label stories.
Oh God.
And it starts at the very beginning, you know, back in those days, as you can remember, you know, there was sort of, there was this sort of divide between indie label and major label. And, you know, was it cooler to be on an indie label, or did you really make it when you got to the major label? And at the end of the day, it was all a bunch of bullshit, because a label is just somebody who's trying to make money off of your music, and that's really all it is. And so starting from the very beginning all the way up through the last label that we were on before we started our own label, Weathermaker, it was a headache. It was battling with the label over what the song sounded like, or when we were going to record, or if it had a radio hit on it or not, or the artwork didn't look the way they thought it would look, or Neil should shave his beard. We heard that. So I mean, you know, this stuff was just, it's hard for me to even think of a specific time, because it was just a lifestyle for 15 years. It was like, okay, we're on another label. This is going to end up badly. We know what's going to happen. Let's just grind this out until we get to the next.
You're a very unique band. You're very, you know, you don't fit into any slot. I mean, between the lyrical stuff and, I mean, what's it? Green Bucket's a song about recycling. I mean, really? You know, I mean, just like, I can't explain to people why Clutch is so great. They just have to feel it, or they don't feel it, you know.
Yeah. I think that was part of the frustration early on too, is because you know, the label would see that we had a fan base. There were folks who were coming to the show. There were some folks who were buying the record. We never had a breakthrough hit in the 90s, but we sold a few records consistently all of the time. And so I think the label saw that. They saw, oh, well, you know, this band can go into town, and, you know, at that point, maybe 250 people would come to the shows, but that would be everywhere across the country. Didn't matter where you put us, there would be 250 people there. The label saw that, and they thought, oh, well, this is a good base. You know, they used to say that a lot. Oh, we have a good base to work with, whatever the hell that means. And so they would ultimately, you know, we would do a deal with them. We would go in the studio, we would make a record, we'd turn the record in, and then they would take the radio, and they would take the record to radio, and they would work it for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And they would quickly realize, okay, well, you know what? No one's really buying this Green Buckets thing. So
Oh my God.
at that point, we would be stuck on the label until they either would agree to let us go, or they would just drop us.
Yeah.
And so that happened for a lot in the first part of the band. You know, again, it's just, you have to go through it though, right? I mean, you have to have those experiences to become who you are, and how you sound and the way we play.
I remember like just being so into you and thinking, you know, these labels, who's behind Soul Asylum, but not Clutch? Who's behind the Goo Goo Dolls, but not Clutch? I mean, what the hell?
But you guys got on the
Who are these
Walking
people?
Dead.
That's right. That's right.
They had a song.
We did, and
Yeah.
the reason we got on the Walking Dead is because somebody who worked at the Walking Dead liked us. They liked that song. They liked the band, and that's been the story of our career. It's never been because we've had this sort of the right video, or we knew the right manager, or we had the right promoter, and it was just because people said, "Hey, I dig that. I get that. I'm with that. I want to be a part of it." And
I honestly almost had a heart attack when that Clutch song came on.
He's kind of late to the
I
party
could
on
not
The
believe
Walking
it.
Dead. I said, no, you have to watch it. So we started from the beginning, I guess about 2 years ago, and he's all caught up. But when that came on, he was like,
Shocked. Wow.
Yeah, I'm with you. My wife was a fan of the show prior to that. I didn't really know much about it, and we were sitting there, just watching the show, and here comes the song. Who knew?
that's
Great.
amazing.
Great. Yeah.
Oh, should we do our game?
Let's do our game.
Okay, so we do a game with
Okay.
all of our wonderful guests. I have questions here labeled 1 through 100. So I want you to pick 5 numbers, and those will correspond to random questions.
Yeah.
Okay. 13, 29, 52, 75, and 85.
All right, so we'll
Okay.
start with lucky number 13.
Yep.
Okay.
How do you take your coffee?
Black.
All right.
Us too.
After our own heart. You say, I'll take it black. And they go, okay, you want room for cream? Or you say, I'll take it black. And they give you 5 creamers with it. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? They just don't get it.
Yep.
All right, number 29. What did you want to be as a kid?
I wanted to be a Navy pilot.
Really?
Yeah. When I was in elementary school, especially, I was obsessed with World War II aircraft, and I had a really thick book that had the specs of every American fighter, bomber, and that went for German airplanes and Japanese airplanes. And man, there was a time I had that stuff memorized. I could tell you how many horsepower an F6F Hellcat had, for example.
Wow. Oh yeah.
I knew who made the engines. So I thought I wanted to do that. And then I realized if you're going to be a Navy pilot, you have to do your homework.
Oh God.
That was the rub. That was.
I kind of had that too. I remember like 6th, 7th, 8th grade. I remember we read like Guadalcanal Diary. Like we were really into all that stuff. Yeah. And yeah, all the military World War II books were fascinating. I think it was explosions. We just liked explosions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like just the way the airplanes looked. I like how badass they were, and I still do. When oftentimes if we have a day off, I'll find a museum, and I'll go look at the airplanes.
Yeah.
All right, number 52. What is your favorite rock and roll souvenir?
My favorite rock and roll souvenir. Well, maybe it's not a rock and roll souvenir.
Oh my.
But my drum buddy, Chase Lapp,
Okay.
he and I both very much love to listen to and talk about Elvin Jones. Elvin Jones played drums most famously for the John Coltrane Quartet. Okay. And so several years ago, Elvin passed, and his wife put a lot of his stuff up on eBay. So you could buy an Elvin Jones road case, or you could buy an Elvin Jones snare drum. Well, Chase bought me a set of Elvin Jones brushes. And this is the real deal. These are brushes that he actually played. You can even tell they're sort of sweaty and kind of beat up. And that's all from Elvin just mashing them into the head and doing his thing.
That's
so
awesome.
I love these brushes.
You stood up and I thought he's going to get Buddy Rich's dentures. I know that's what's going to happen. I'm ready.
Number
75. If you were a donut, what kind of donut would you be?
Oh man. Well, at our old practice space, when we were living in Germantown, we used to practice right across the street from Montgomery Donuts. I don't know if you guys had those out there in Baltimore, but Montgomery Donuts was one of those old-fashioned donut places, and it had an old-fashioned kind of coffee bar there, and they would have a donut called the old-fashioned style or old-fashioned donut. And so that was probably my favorite one. It's just deep fried dough, you know.
Yeah.
Plain and simple and good.
Hard to beat that. Yeah.
All right. 85. Would you rather explore the ocean or space?
Space.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No hesitation at all.
No, that would be cool. I would love to do that one day. Maybe
Just
we
gotta
will. We used to
Develop a
joke
relationship with Elon Musk, and
we used to joke that we would be the first band to play on the moon. Maybe we'll still do
Mhm.
that.
So you guys have a big European tour coming up. Do you guys have a favorite city or place that you love to play over there?
There's some really great cities in Europe. I tell you, man, Spain is really great. Barcelona is especially nice. Bilbao, I had a great night off in Bilbao. Amazing place, beautiful city, incredible food. I would recommend that if anybody wanted to go to Europe on a vacation, I would very much recommend Spain, and it can be any city. Just pick up the map and just point at a town. I guarantee you're gonna just go there. It'll be great. It's an amazing place. It's beautiful, and very much enjoy that.
of course, not anywhere close to the old Seagull Inn or AL Gators. I'm sure,
Absolutely not.
nothing would ever touch that. I don't care if Franz Kafka had coffee there.
Right.
So with the open air festivals, is the crowd, are they good? Are they well behaved? Have you ever had a situation where stuff got out of control?
The only time I remember stuff getting really out of control was on the Sepultura tour,
Oh my.
where we played what was at that time called the Mammoth Event Center. Now the Mammoth Event Center. Now it's called the Fillmore. But back then it was just this enormous room, and this was during Sepultura's Chaos AD tour.
Yeah.
And the band was just
right before they started to suck. Sorry, did I say that? Sorry.
The
Anyway,
band was absolutely on fire, and a lot of people say, they would say, well, who's better, Slayer or Sepultura? And I can tell you, I've seen Slayer. They're always awesome. But when it comes to just straight up brutal music, Sepultura at that time, that lineup, absolutely untouchable.
Yeah.
Really one of the most crushing things I've ever seen. So this promoter, he puts this show at the Mammoth Event Center, and as a barricade, he takes bicycle racks and he just sort of puts them in front of the stage. And I can tell you that when Sepultura hit, it took all of a minute for the bicycle racks just to go everywhere. People were almost climbing up on stage. It was wild. That's the only time I saw something really get crazy.
Did you have any like drum geek outs with Igor on that tour? I mean,
yeah, we used to hang a lot.
Yeah. I bet that was a meeting of the minds.
Yeah, it really was. He would tell me stories about when he first started playing. He couldn't afford a bass drum, so he just had a floor tom and a snare drum, and that's how he made those beats.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
And then when they made their first record, they got an advance, and he went out and bought a drum set that had bass drums, and they showed up at the studio, and they put them down there. He'd never played the damn things before. He didn't even know how to play bass drums at that time.
Yeah, Latin America was like the moon back then. I mean, it was just like, civilization didn't go that far south. That's hats off to Sepultura for fighting out of that. It's crazy.
Absolutely, and the real love and passion for the music. That's really where that came from. Those guys started, from a place that would be the most unlikely place for a heavy metal band to come out. And eventually be, I think, probably one of the most influential bands of that time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sepultura.
Yeah, I was reading him the lineup for your Germany Open Air Festival, and he said, "Where's that? Why don't we go?" I said, "First of all, it's in Europe. Second of all, it's already sold out. So congratulations for that. That's
so it's
amazing.
Not in Rockville? No? Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Those festivals are a lot of fun. The cool thing is seeing bands that maybe you hadn't seen before, or just checking out some new music. It's a different vibe than a club gig. but it's a trade-off. On the one hand, you're on a huge stage and it feels as if you're very far away from the people. But at the same time, those folks, they have made it a point to be there for the entire weekend, and they are ready to do it. And so if you just get up there and you just make the best music that you can make, the reception will be good.
All right, so I have a Hendrix related question for you. So we were in the airport somewhere, and they had this British themed coffee bar, and they had pictures of Hendrix up. And I said, he's from Seattle. They don't get to claim him. Do you think they get to claim him because of the band and Eric Burden and all?
You could argue that he played here and didn't really get the recognition that he deserved.
That's our fault. That's on us.
I mean, you could argue that. He went over there and immediately made an impact. I got to, you're talking about Hendrix. This is one of my favorite.
Oh yes. Oh,
I love that one.
Love it.
And what I really love about it is that, let's see if I can get it in the picture. Down here, there's what looks to me like a black Gibson Les Paul Custom.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
And it's just laying there on the ground. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how about that? Like, Hendrix had the opportunity to play that Les Paul Custom. He's like, no, just leave that on the ground. I'm gonna play my Strat.
His first, like the legend of his first shows in England, where he's noodling around. And he's like, I'm having trouble tuning this thing, Eric Clapton. You want to come up here and help me with this thing? I mean, just
right.
Rock folklore at its greatest.
And could you imagine what a terrifying experience it would have been, if you had studied guitar all your life and you considered yourself a blues guitarist or a rock guitarist or whatever you thought of yourself, and you go to this gig and you see this dude up there you've never seen before, never even heard of him.
Right.
It's like the guy's a damn alien. And to this day, I love watching those YouTube videos of him. It's still, he is absolutely untouchable, and he occupies such a unique and special place in rock and roll.
Where would you rank I really like the Band of Gypsies band. Where would you rank them? But would you be more? Are you more of a experience or Band of Gypsies? Like, where would you rank them?
Band of Gypsies was the first Hendrix that I really sunk my teeth into.
I really like that album.
Yeah. Of course I heard, Wind Cries Mary and Red House and those things as I was growing up. Right. But I can remember very specifically having a Band of Gypsies cassette that my buddy Steve Levine, he lent me. Yeah. And I can remember putting that cassette in my car and driving through a snowstorm, and it just blew me away. And to this day, it still does. It's such an amazing record.
Machine Gun. Oh my God, it's amazing. It never loses its luster. It's incredible.
Yeah, and the note, the one note where he goes, bah!
Oh. Exactly what you're talking about.
That's the one. It still gives me shivers. It's amazing.
What a great way to end an interview then with a total Hendrix geek out.
Yeah.
Well, this was great. Thanks, Jean Paul.
And we hope to catch up with you guys once you get back from Europe. We'll have to get out again.
Yeah.
Well, we're putting together the schedule for next year, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be playing in the area. So let's make it a point to say hello.
I can never see enough Clutch shows. I've been so many times.
And now he needs a new shirt, so we have a.
Yeah, it's my fourth. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got him.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
This is the Snaggletooth Rock and Roll Podcast.